Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever caught yourself wondering why life can sometimes feel like an endless parade of obstacles? Well, today we're exploring a deeply fascinating 2022 cosmological framework by an author named Xu Feng. It's laid out in a text titled, "There Will Be Necessary Setbacks and Tribulations on the Journey of Life." Basically, it attempts to answer that age-old question of why human suffering exists. But instead of saying it's all just random chaos, this text presents a universe governed by an incredibly strict mathematical system of cosmic debt. It is a highly structured, almost rigid philosophy, and we are going to break down exactly how the whole shebang actually works.
Right out of the gate, I want to pose a highly provocative question taken directly from our source material. Who wants to be a pig? Now, I know that sounds a little absurd at first, right? But within this specific cosmological framework, this isn't a joke at all. It actually represents the extreme end of a very serious mechanism of cosmic debt and reincarnation. The text argues that becoming a farm animal isn't about what you might want. It's about what you might absolutely have to do to balance out your spiritual ledger. We're going to get back to exactly how a person supposedly ends up in that bizarre situation in just a few moments. But first, let's establish the baseline reality that this entire text is built upon.
So the source text grounds its philosophy in a universal, if slightly pessimistic, reality. It brings up an old saying that implies essentially 80 to 90% of life is completely unsatisfactory. The text frankly acknowledges that we only find genuine happiness in maybe 10 to 20% of the things we encounter every day. It even points out that people who live to be 70 or 80 often look back with a lot of sighs and regrets. But instead of just brushing this off as bad luck, the text asks a really fundamental question. Why? Why is life designed this way? According to this framework, this dissatisfaction is not a bug in the system. It's a perfectly functioning feature of the universe.
Okay, let's dive into this by defining a core concept from the source material, the flawed life. Now notice the text capitalizes the word life here to denote a specific spiritual entity. A flawed life is defined as an existence that is heavily burdened with debts, and it actually doesn't matter if these debts were accrued up in heaven or down here on earth, they are outstanding balances that absolutely must be repaid, no exceptions. Because of this massive debt, a flawed life is essentially disqualified from remaining in a heavenly paradise and is actively forced to reincarnate down into our physical world.
To truly grasp this, we need to understand how the text divides all of existence into two deeply contrasting realms. On one side, you've got higher-level space. This is reserved for the perfect life. Beings here get to live eternally in heaven, and crucially, the text says they completely lack the function of selfishness. On the flip side is the lower-level space, and well, that's us. This is where the flawed life resides. We are reincarnated into this lower world specifically because our life structure is born inherently with that exact function of selfishness. So, according to this framework, just being human means you are inherently wired to be selfish.
That brings us to our first major concept, the cosmic law of debt.
So, we have these flawed, inherently selfish lives, operating down here in a lower realm. But what are the overarching rules governing this spiritual cosmology? Well, the entire philosophy hinges on one foundational, almost mathematical law of the universe. The text calls it the law of zero. It states that the combination of all positive and negative energies in the entire universe must always equal zero. Think of it like a giant cosmic accounting book that has to perfectly balance at the end of the day. Because of this fundamental mathematical law, every single spiritual or moral debt we accumulate, no matter where or when, creates an imbalance that absolutely must be zeroed out. Your main task in life, the text argues, is simply paying off your balance.
But here is where we hit a massive roadblock. Like we established earlier, human beings are born with the function of selfishness. The text puts it perfectly, stating, "Due to selfishness, it is very difficult for people to repay debts, so Tao arranged some setbacks and tribulations for people to repay debts with." Our inherent human selfishness basically stops us from voluntarily paying back what we owe. I mean, we don't want to suffer. We don't want to sacrifice. So, because we won't balance the books ourselves, the organizing force of the universe, referred to here as the Tao, steps in and forces those payments through life's hardships. In this view, the obstacles in your life are literally just automated cosmic debt collection.
Moving on, let's explore another core principle, the constant of life.
This idea of the universe operating as a strict mathematical system actually goes even deeper. The text uses scientific ideas, specifically constants, to explain the natural world. It asserts that everything in the world is a constant. And this brilliantly illustrates how the constant of life applies to absolutely everything, keeping the ratio of every life form and resource fixed across all scales. Whether you're looking at the micro or macro scale, the math holds up.
The ratio of circumference to diameter is a fixed number whether you're measuring the tiny eye of a needle or the entire Milky Way galaxy. The structural rules for a single bacterium are fundamentally the same as those for a complex human. A single drop of water operates on the same constant as millennia of global oceans.
Now, the text takes this concept of a mathematical constant to an incredibly literal and honestly rather surprising conclusion regarding our own lives. It introduces what we can essentially call the food constant. The framework straightforwardly asserts that the exact total amount of food a person will eat in their entire lifetime is a fixed constant number. It literally argues that if a person consumes their total allotted amount of food by the age of 30, they will definitively starve and die right then and there. Conversely, if you live frugally and never waste a grain of rice, even if you were initially destined to die at 70, your death is actually delayed because your food constant hasn't been used up yet.
So how does all this math apply to our actions? Let's look at the life balance mechanism.
We've got universal math dictating everything from basic geometry to your daily calorie intake. But how does this strict universal accounting apply to human morality and cosmic justice? To ground these highly abstract concepts, the source text provides a very modern, specific example. It brings up a hypothetical scenario of a corrupt governor operating in our world today who embezzles and accepts bribes totaling exactly 200 million yuan. That is a massive injection of negative energy. It's a massive debt added straight into the universal system.
And the universe doesn't just let that slide. The crucial point here is that to maintain a rigorous and eternal constant, the Tao enforces a strict balance mechanism. That 200 million yuan debt must be zeroed out. The text lists the severe cosmic corrections awaiting this corrupt official. They might be arrested and sentenced to death or have all their property completely confiscated. And if human law somehow fails, the cosmic law absolutely steps in. They might be stricken with a terminal illness, driven to suicide, or simply forced to live day and night without a single moment of peace. According to this framework, these aren't random tragedies. This is a perfectly fair and just mechanism keeping the constant of life flawlessly rigorous. Which brings us right back to our initial hook. Remember the pig? Let's look at the exact step-by-step cosmic mechanism of how a soul pays off an impossibly massive debt. Step 1. A soul owes a debt so huge it simply cannot be repaid conventionally while living as a human. Step 2. The universe arranges for them to reincarnate as a pig. Step 3. In this animal form, they are forced to dedicate their blood, meat, bones, and fur. Step 4. They eventually go under the knife, making the ultimate total sacrifice. And finally, step 5, having forcibly balanced their ledger through that total, unwilling sacrifice, they are allowed to return to the world as a human again. It is an incredibly stark, brutal illustration of the law of zero in action.
Okay, so what can we actually do about this? That brings us to the solution: generating merit.
At this point, I know this cosmological framework might feel a bit heavy, maybe inescapable. But the text doesn't just outline the problem, it also offers a very specific path forward. The text offers this poetic reminder that hardship is as natural as the natural world itself. It points out that flowers wither, tides fall, and the moon wanes. These aren't tragedies, they're just regular phenomena. Therefore, the framework argues, when we are faced with our own tribulations and setbacks, we have to treat them exactly the same way. We must maintain a calm mind and, shockingly, even maintain a joyful mind. Why joyful? Because you are finally paying off your debts. Borrowing is easy, paying it back is painful. But experiencing that pain joyfully is apparently the key to escaping the cycle.
Let's translate this into a practical game plan. If you want to balance your cosmic ledger and actually alleviate your setbacks, the source gives you 3 distinct steps. First, you have to completely accept your tribulations as a perfectly fair arrangement designed solely to help you repay your debt. Second, you aggressively maintain that calm and joyful mind when things get really tough. But the third step is the most active one: generate merits. And the text is incredibly clear on this. There is only one way to generate merits, and that is through selfless giving and dedication. Remember, we're in this mess because of our inherent function of selfishness. So the only way to genuinely balance the ledger is to consciously, consistently act completely selflessly. The text closes with a remarkably simple, everyday application of this massive cosmic philosophy. It states that even a moment where someone simply makes you unhappy is considered a tribulation. It's just a tiny little debt collection from the universe. So keeping this vast, highly structured cosmological framework in mind, I want to leave you with a final thought. When the universe inevitably throws a minor annoyance your way today, a rude comment, a traffic jam, someone spilling your coffee, will you react with your inherent selfishness and create more debt? Or will you accept it joyfully and zero out your ledger?